Hi, I'm Ed. Welcome to Common Sense.
And I'm John.
Hey, John.
How you doing, Ed?
I'm good because it's not snowing here in Boston today. And we had snow yesterday, the 2nd of April, and it's just enough already.
Yeah, you guys can't buy a break this year. Yeah.
It's spring from here on out. But
Yeah.
opening day for the Yankees, the opening homestand for the Yankees got postponed yesterday because of snow in New York. And so,
That's,
as long as we inflicted a little pain on the Yankees, we're okay with it.
All right, so today we're going to get into the weeds on marketing a little bit, and we're going to ask the question, are marketers out of touch with customers? So a lot of my best friends will call themselves marketers, and if I asked that question to them, they'd probably say, of course not. We're always in touch with customers. We interview them, we do surveys, we create buyer personas, we cater all of our marketing efforts to them. Of course we're in touch with customers.
They'd be offended that you even asked.
Right. I mean, they could say, where are you coming from? But then if you ask somebody else, like the customers themselves, the employers of the marketers or salespeople, for example, they'd probably give you a different answer. So that's what we're going to explore today. So let's start with customers. If you ask them that question, what would they say?
I'd say short answer, without a doubt, unequivocally, yes, marketers are out of touch. It's easy. And the bottom line, how many websites do you go to that marketers have built that really don't talk about anything? 90% of it is about nothing except product or service, on the site or in their print brochures or at their trade show booth or whatever. I mean, by definition, they're out of touch because they're talking about what they want to talk about as opposed to what the customers want to talk about. So the goals of visitors and leads and revenue are different than the goals of finding the best solution and solving problems. Everyone, in my experience, understands that the question of orientation is critical in order to drive engagement and repeat visits. They know that you got to answer the customer's questions, but somehow there's this disconnect when marketing gets a hold of it and they start to build it out. They just miss that. And there's a survey on customer experience, a Walker survey, that said that 86% of buyers would pay more for a great customer experience. We've all had that sort of an opinion. We've had those like, Jesus, don't make it so painful. Just, I'll pay you more. Make it easy for me. And the Walker survey. Yeah, exactly. And the survey also predicts that by 2020, customer experience will overtake price and product as the key differentiators. I mean, this is what Brian Solis has been talking about for a long time. Visitors to your site, visitors interacting with your company by telephone, through the auto attendant or website, through the navigation, whatever the case may be, they got to find quickly what they're looking for at each stage in the journey. They got to be able to quickly achieve what they want to achieve, whether it's learning or researching, getting details, asking questions, making a purchase. And it can be, increasingly complex depending on whether it's low consideration, high consideration, complex sale. But the point is that for buyers, regardless of how they're interacting with your business, they have to be clear how they'll achieve their outcome. And the experience has to be personalized and seamless through their very first interaction on up to kind of ongoing loyalty sorts of nurturing. And if any of these are out of whack, that can doom not only the initial sale, but also it damages loyalty. And so kind of backing up to your question, if that's what it should look like, and it only looks that way in very rare occasions, then I'd say by definition, yes, marketers are out of touch. But you may disagree.
Well, I'll partially disagree. I think that marketers in general think about what customers want, and the mission that they have that's defined by their job description is often different from what you're describing. It's much more about lead generation. It's more about generating new sales. It's about attracting new buyers. So with that mindset, they're really much more focused on campaigns and advertising and content and things that they create in order to do that, to attract people. So that's part of the problem, I think, that we're talking about. But the thing is, as you said, they need to improve on that. They need to really start focusing on what the customers really want. And maybe the customers don't really want ebooks and emails and advertising. And, maybe all those things are really more of a distraction than they are an attraction. In fact, there was a Conduit survey in 2015 that said that, even in the tech industry, which you'd think would be like on top of all this stuff, nearly half of all customers are dissatisfied with the tech suppliers. And that satisfaction has dropped 10% in the last couple of years. So it's not getting better, it's getting worse. So you might think that it's the customer service people that are screwing up and not the marketers, but really it starts much earlier than the customer support. And it's really all about, not providing a quick response to what people want, even before the sale. So, most customers are expecting very rapid response within like 30 to 60 minutes on social media, and we'll get to that later. But most people think that they're just not getting enough support. 80% of customers are not getting the first step resolution. 75%, eventually will get some support. But users are obviously frustrated, even at the beginning of the buyer journey. So that's not getting solved. And what can we do about that? What's some common sense things we can start to think about doing?
Well, so clearly, the reality lays somewhere in the middle. It's not that marketers are just these completely arrogant, out-of-touch people disregarding users, but nor are companies fully aligned. And as you talk about it, it almost sounds like what you're describing is a situation where this is a management and philosophical kind of a thing, where marketers are doing what they're told to do, and they're not being told what they ought to be doing in order to satisfy the customer. So, I think the solution ends up being one that involves management, involves strategy, and involves alignment of company, alignment toward satisfying customers in a more robust way, not according to some successories poster on the wall in the conference room, but according to really embracing it and understanding what that means. And it's going to take nuance, and it's going to take a realistic assessment of what's going on. But you asked the question, so I'm guessing that you probably have a couple ideas for where a company might start to do that.
Well, I don't think it's going to be easy, but I do think we need to rethink the goal and the goals and the roles of marketers.
It's got a good ring to it.
Yeah. But, the problem is that we have these processes in place, and we're trained and told as marketers, and even, are influenced by thought leaders in the industry to do things certain ways. So building a campaign, running advertising, what kinds of content, how to deploy it in the buyer journey, all these things come at you as a marketer, and you're really told by your bosses and by their bosses and by your customers, that you need to do things a certain way. So there's not a lot of thinking outside the box, and there's not a lot of cooperation between the different disciplines. And so that's really one of the root causes of this problem. So I wouldn't blame the marketers per se. It's just that they're stuck in this mindset that you have to do marketing, you have to attract leads, you have to take these tactics into, embracing them every day and just focusing on that. And a lot of it has to do with what KPIs you're supposed to resolve for, leads, SQLs, customers, revenue, all those sorts of things you're focusing on, and not focusing on customer happiness at all stages of the game. So it's partly built into the system. So what can we do at a structural or organizational level to try to clarify these roles and goals?
So we're not going to let marketers completely off the hook. It's easy to say, well, their thought leaders that they follow say you need to take these tactical steps and follow this. And they could say no. They could push back. They could go to management and say we want to do it differently. On the other hand, we'll acknowledge the fact that management often gives them KPIs that kind of channelize them into doing some of the stuff that doesn't take into account the way humans buy. But, still here kind of we are back to this binary sort of a thing. It's yes or no, black or white. Are marketers a problem, or are they victims of what's going on around them? And
Right.
the bottom line is, if what we need to do is improve the customer experience, then that's, I think, if we focus on that, then the rest of the pieces start to fall into place. Rather than saying what should marketers do, let's say what do customers expect, and then how do marketers backfill to satisfy that.
Right. And I think, we can take things in steps. So we can start with something relatively simple, something we've been doing for many years now, and that is using social media to engage or communicate with customers and with leads and with visitors. And what happens, unfortunately, right now is that there's still this mindset where a marketer thinks that all they have to do is promote content on social media, make sure that you get as many followers as possible and you get comments and that kind of thing. But social media is also used as a primary communication tool back and forth with customers. And customers want that kind of immediate satisfaction, that immediate communication and answers to their questions. So we should be doing both. And what we have been doing is splitting this in half and giving the marketers the promotion and the customer service people, the technical support side of things, for example. And that doesn't work very well. It's not satisfying to customers because they want, they don't always want the same thing. They want, before they buy something, they want some technical questions answered. And the marketers might not know how to answer those questions, or they might just completely ignore them, because their job is to promote. So we need to fix that problem right there. And if we just focus on one channel and we get the marketers, the salespeople, and the customer service people all kind of on the same playbook, using that same kind of data that's coming into the CRM and the marketing automation system, we can all have a game plan together where we can quickly, using chatbots or whatever it is, solve these problems much more quickly and have the right people on the right response, within a few seconds rather than hours. So that's one way to start doing this.
But the key thing that you just painted on that picture is you've got a multidisciplinary team. You're crossing silos, because if the answer is just dump this on marketing, well, you're going to stress them out, which may not be the biggest consideration, but people get stressed out, they get tired, and they do stupid stuff, and they give silly answers, and they give half-assed, get it off, cross it off my list, say I took care of it kind of responses, and that's the worst kind of an outcome. And just because it's communication related, people are inclined to dump it into marketing, but communication covers a lot of different sorts of things. We've talked about conversational marketing and sales. So communication could be with existing customers, it could be customer service. And so the only way that you can begin to route that sort of stuff, have those conversations happen productively, have them happen promptly and efficiently and correctly in order to meet expectations, is to cross those silos, just like you said, where you've got marketing, you've got sales, you've got customer support, customer service, tech support, whatever it is in your industry, that can work together and collaborate on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you think we need to do next to sort of put these things in place? Where do we start with that?
Well, all these conversations always kind of come circling back to the same point. There's got to be alignment between sales and marketing and customer service. And that starts with leadership. And it's not a management question. Management is going to just continue to allocate budgets and headcounts the way they have. This is really a leadership question. This is a corporate strategy philosophy kind of a gut check. Are we willing to really focus on buyers? And if we are, then how do we change our organization to do it? And it's once you've reached that point where you say, okay, philosophically, this organization is going to change from being inward focused to being outward focused, then you need to adapt other things, the voice and tone of your communication. You can't have your website and your phone tree and your literature lecture people. You got to have a conversation with them. It's got to be helpful. A really cheesy but incredibly effective thing that I've seen some companies do is put a big stuffed animal like you win with the air rifle thing at the country fair, or a mannequin or whatever, put it in a chair at the conference table and make sure that every conversation takes into account that's your proxy customer. Make sure that what you're talking about is relevant and pertinent and appropriate for them. And if the customer sitting there listening would be looking at you like, are you guys nuts? I mean, why are you talking about doing this? Don't you know what it's going to do to me as a customer? If you can add that perspective by physically filling that seat with somebody as a proxy for the customer, that can really change the tone of some conversations. Website, it's a no-brainer at this point. The website's got to be optimized for the customer experience, and so few are. It's amazing how few are, even though, everyone understands it intuitively, but the emotional tie to the very traditional structure and navigation and corporate babble that goes on websites is just so hard for some companies to overcome. Yeah. Content, it's got to be relevant. It's got to be helpful. It's got to be distributed to the right people at the right time based on the right kinds of questions. And maybe it's not behind forms anymore. Maybe it's not gated. Maybe it's with a simple sort of an email address into a chat bot to just make it easier and more fluid for people. Certainly it's got to be mobile optimized. Everyone's got to participate in responding to customers and making sure the needs are met. And that, again, means across silos in the organization.
Especially sales. I think a lot of times sales just says, hey, my job's done.
Exactly.
It's your problem now, customer service.
Or if it's a lead, sales says, oh, well, social media, that's what marketing handles. How many complex B2B salespeople do you know that actually cultivate their social media profiles themselves and share that and interact with people? Almost none do. They say, oh, well, that's not relevant for me. That's crazy. And there's a ton of data. We've got to use technology to accumulate the data and understand how to be more efficient. And then once we've accumulated it, we actually need to do something with it. We got to look at it and figure out what we can learn and how to segment and respond to customers better according to their needs. So there's a lot of work to do, but it all starts, we consistently come back to these same couple points in our conversations. There's got to be a management and leadership decision, kind of a Rubicon that's crossed that says we're focusing on customers, and then that trickles down into organizational adaptation.
Well, that sounds like the right plan to me. So if we can just get the executive team on board, we might just make this happen.
Well, executive team, that's an interesting question. Is management part of the problem or are they solution? And I suggest that's what we tackle next time. We can argue about whether management is right or wrong during our next Common Sense.
Sounds good.
So thanks for joining us today. This is Common Sense. I'm Ed.
And I'm John. See you next time.